Thank you very much, Butcherd, and thanks a lot also to the organizer for inviting me to this conference. I have some slides as well, and in this presentation that I try to share now, I will basically let me go through. Okay, you can see that. I will basically address some of the topics already addressed by my predecessors, like Monica, Victor, and Ruta too. I will focus more, let's say, the attention on the relationship between legal ontologies and the implementation of the semantic web. So actually, there's no doubt that the IT environment is dominated by topics like smart data, semantic web, natural language processing, in general, artificial intelligence. And this is even more true in the legal domain, because this AI and law is actually a combination that comes from afar. In fact, the law, we can say that the law is made of rules and interprets and creates facts. Similarly, the Turing machines, the computer processes facts, the data basically, through the rules. And it does it according to different paradigms, like Victor before said, the symbolic paradigm. So basically using rules expressed by symbols in an expert system mainly. And in sub-symbolic paradigm, so the so-called connectionist models, where rules are considered as a combination of elementary processing structures, and the neural networks are an examples of this kind of models. So now, AI, on the other hand, requires knowledge. This is quite true, quite well known from several, let's say, analysis of different academics. And but actually, managing knowledge, it's also a certain kind of a problem, because it's voluminous, it's hard to characterize accurately, it is constantly changing, and it requires a semantic organization. Now, in the mid-90s, basically AI meets the web, which means that AI meet the availability of a large quantity of information in digital format for the development of AI systems. So it is also true that the internet and the web need advanced application for managing data. So basically, the interaction between AI and the web came into practice. The evolution of AI has followed since that time the evolution of the web. So we went out from the so-called AI winter, which was the period of the 80s, basically. Then having this great amount of information available in a structured format helped and is helping a lot the development of AI systems. So let's see how, let's say, the AI and the law have been improved, let's say, and have been considered in the sense of the evolution of the web from the so-called Web 1.0 to the Web 3.0. As we all know, that, let's say, that the first era of the web was the so-called static web, where we had static information with a limited interaction with the users. Then in the mid 2000, we passed to the so-called Web 2.0 or social web, characterized by the possibility of sharing content and to have a let's say, the possibility for collaborative content creation. For example, Wikipedia is one of the success stories in this era of the web. But nevertheless, especially in the legal domain, people and also practitioners had specific information needs First of all, because access to law and court decision, it's an important aspect. It's a matter of transparency and legal certainty. And moreover, this is even more complex, considered the multilingual complexity, for example, of the European Union. In particular, legal users have specific information need. It is very clear that it's important to have a unique point of access to resources in a distributed environment, especially as far as legal text is concerned, which means submitting a query in a specific language and from a unique point of access, and retrieving pertinent documents from different sources. So what we need is actually advanced legal information retrieval and reasoning services that allows you to respond to queries like which version, for example, of Directive 2003/98 of the European Commission, adopted on 17 November 2003, was in force on 26 June of 2013. So it's very hard to ask for a general purpose search engine like Google, for example, to retrieve and to respond to a question, to a query like that. Or in the member states acts, which law is applicable to divorce of cross-border couples? Or even more specifically, which national laws on consumer protection do apply in a specific region? At a higher level of abstraction, which are the rights of the consumer according to the EU law? And even more specifically, which are the implicit rights of the consumer according to the EU law? So the last question in particular requires specific reasoning on the legal text from the human perspective, and also obviously for the machine perspective. So there's no possibility for general purpose, even well advanced, to respond to such kind of user needs. So what is the right answer? It's actually the era that we are currently passing through. So this is called Web 3.0, or also called semantic web, or web of data, or Internet of Things. They are actually, all of them are synonyms, basically. So what is actually the semantic web? It's the process of embedding in the World Wide Web information that is understandable by humans, but also processable and understandable by machines, which means that actually that you can have an actual interaction between human and machines, but also from machine to machines. The objectives are the technological, semantic, multilingual interoperability between information systems, as previously has been said by my colleagues. So having the possibility to develop advanced access services. Now, in the semantic web, the development of legal ontologies is essential. So modeling legal knowledge is essential in the semantic web, and it's a precondition for the implementation of the semantic web in the legal domain, which means that legal ontologies in the semantic web are artifacts for legal knowledge modeling, so that you have the possibility to, let's say, interact directly with the computer, and the computer can interact one to the other, exchanging legal knowledge, and having the possibility to implement legal reasoning facilities. Now, in the last few years, a specific trend has been developed, which is basically the so-called linked open data. So linked data are nothing but structured and correlated data on the web, while linked open data are linked data published with open licenses. So basically, the semantic web, the so-called the Web 3.0, is made up of linked open data. So you can say that the semantic web is the whole, while linked open data is the parts. So let's see what we can do with in the legal domain using legal ontologies and basically modeling legal knowledge to develop advanced services. So let's consider, for example, this business case. Let's consider a user that wants to subscribe an online contract. He might be willing to know which is to know much more about the consumer protection law, and in particular, he might be interested in knowing which are the consumer's rights, like, for example, the right of withdrawal or the supplier's duty towards the consumers, which are actually implicit rights of the consumer, or which are the procedure to fulfill the consumer's duties and the sanction in case or of not compliance. Now, all these kind of questions, queries, or information needs can be effectively, let's say, addressed by a system which is able to describe a specific knowledge about the consumer protection law, for example, in a way that is shareable in computer systems. So what we need is actually a retrieval system of norms endowed with reasoning facilities. And for doing that, you should have a specific ontology, in particular an ontology that is able to describe provisions within a legal text, to have a specific annotation of the legal resources, which is actually the experience that Ruta before described in her experience. And in this case, we have the possibility to annotate text using a specific ontology made of legal concepts like duty, rights, power, or definitions or procedures, and concepts like suppliers, consumers, and other kind of concepts that can be represented in a shared and standard fashion. So now, having this possibility to by a legal ontology to provide semantic annotation of text, or in this case, our paragraph of an article or two articles here of the consumer protection law, you have the possibility to implement specific retrieval facilities like please give me the rights, my rights. I'm a consumer, for example. I would like to know which are my rights. And the system can retrieve back to you the rights where the consumer is the addressee, but also with a specific reasoning made on top according to specific actions that can be implemented in ontology, can be also the duties of the suppliers, where the consumer is the counterpart, can be retrieved because they are actually rights of the consumer, which is the typical, let's say, Ofeldian reasoning, which was previously addressed also by Giovanni. And moreover, you can also have the possibility to retrieve the duty of the suppliers implementing a specific communication constraints and the procedure to fulfill to such constraints or to such procedure. Now, how can we do that? We can do that, let's say, I can share with you an experience that I'm currently following at the Publications Office of the European Union, where, let's say, at European level, we are trying to implement a so-called open data cloud focused on EU law. Actually, all this in this picture, you can see all the sources of information that are managed by the Publications Office of the European Union. The main one is the EU law, and the EURLEX, for example, is the mostly service which is mostly known. Then we have pre-legislation, EU research, general EU information, case law, public procurement, and also other European Union data. All this material is basically stored in the so-called cellar, which is the central hub for EU publications and data. It's actually a semantic repository, maybe the largest one at European level, of legal and non-legal resources, which are semantically described using a specific ontology. Actually, we have more than 250 million documents in 24 languages, metadata in 24 languages, 1,500 million semantic statements, so the RDF triples that basically represent the semantic annotation of the metadata of the resources, and the 10 million requests per day. And as I said before, there is an ontology behind the so-called CDM, or Common Data Model, that is the ontology for metadata description of such resources. Another interesting, let's say, business case, it's actually a pilot project that I followed in collaboration with European Parliament, which is called Linked Open Data and E-Participation. It was a project meant to produce a pilot for allowing citizens to collaborate in, let's say, collaborate in the legislative process. So basically, in this platform, which is nothing but a social network for following the lawmaking process at European level, users can visualize in a selective fashion the legal resources, can visualize them in a specific, let's say, in a selective way, can provide comments to the single provisions, and they can also provide amendments, and this information can be submitted to the members for their let's say approval or not. And here you have, for example, the discussion forum with the comments, sentiment, and amendments. So users can say I agree or I disagree. It's just like in Facebook you have I like or I dislike. Obviously here they will have a different meaning, but there is also the possibility to see statistics on user sentiments per document and section, so that you have a possibility to see the general metadata of the act and the reaction of the users. So you have a number of comments, how many of these comments are positive, neutral, or negative. What is important to know is that all those data, or actually the documents, are coming from the seller, so from the semantic repository I showed before. And all the data are produced according to a specific ontology, and so are stored in a so-called triple store, and in principle they can be reused by third parties. So here we have maps of sentiments and activities per country. So you can see where that specific act received much more approval with respect to other country, or how much the activity in a country has been, how much a country has been more active or not. So what actually open data and semantic web and legal ontologies are about? They have to do with business model for data consuming and sharing. For example, with the possibility to provide the third parties with data. With those data, they can develop web services or apps for mobile phones. But in conjunction with the government initiatives, like the one that we have seen before, they are about legal data accessibility, quality, reusability for citizens. And so in finally, they have to do with a promotion of freedom, justice, and democracy. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much.